We are back here on WLTH 1370 AM. I'm Scott Cannon. Over there is Reverend Delwyn Campbell.
Hey now.
The number is 219-885-1371. If you got any questions, please give us a call. You want to talk or you want to rap about something that's going on in the region, in the area? We were just talking about BLM. And Rev, I sent you a story about that there was a study that recently came out that said that the federal government deliberately targeted Black Lives Matter protesters via heavy-handed criminal prosecutions in an attempt to disrupt and discourage the global movement that swept the nation last summer in the wake of the Minneapolis police killing of George Floyd, according to a new report released by the Movement for Black Lives. Movement leaders said and experts said the prosecution of protesters over the past year continues to be a century-long practice by the federal government rooted in structural racism to suppress Black social movements via the use of surveillance tactics and other mechanisms. Now, the Associated Press were the ones who first shared this. They argued that as with the upswings in the summer, uprisings in the summer of 2020 increased, so did the police presence, the deployment of federal agents and prosecution for protesters. Titled "The Struggle for Power: The Ongoing Persecution of Black Movements by the U.S. Government." The report shows in detail how policing has been used historically as a tool to deter Black people from engaging in their right to protest and weaken efforts to draw attention to issues impacting African Americans. Also drew a comparison to how the government used COINTELPRO against the Black Panthers and other organizations. Now, this report was released in partnership with the Creating Law Enforcement Accountability and Responsibility Clinic at the City University of New York School of Law. The Movement for Black Lives is calling for amnesty for all protesters involved in nationwide protests. Now, that's just not going to happen. I don't care, period. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
But when I read this, I will say that I'm not shocked by any of this, or whether there's any sort of, whether some of the prosecutions were justified or whether some of them unjustified or whether majority. We all know that, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, the idea, especially that came with Russiagate, and this is why I was such a big critic of it, that the U.S. government is going to use any opportunity they can, whether it's with social media, whether it's with protest, or whether it's anything else, to essentially crack down on the type of on anything that they view as being deviated from the norm, especially when you're dealing with groups like the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI. These type of organizations are historically, they've been there to essentially crack down on these issues. Now, here's the one difference, is that now we sort of see a lot of right-wingers who are complaining about this, especially since Russiagate, that they are facing a lot of the same type of persecution. But historically, as the report talked about, now somebody's calling. Okay. Hold on, caller. Please don't hang up. Okay. Do not hang up. Rev got to get in here.
Well, I'd like to hear what the person says.
Oh, all right. Hello, caller. The Rev is stowed on you. What's up?
Well, Hoover, when he was the head of the FBI,
yes,
he made a statement that the worst thing that could probably happen is Black people unifying.
Yes, the Black Messiah.
So you have to take it from there and look exactly from a, should I say, a white government official point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that anytime Blacks unite to any form, they're there to destroy it.
Mm.
This has been shown, like I said, with Mark Clark, Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
It happened. They were infiltrated.
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter has been infiltrated. And we have to take that and have a look at it as being that way. Because this is the way that this government operates. Absolutely. And to me, I feel as though an organization like Black Lives Matter, which basically is an organization that really covers probably all 50 states that Black people are in. I'll put it that way.
Well, is it actually an organization?
Well,
they don't seem to have
there is an organization. There is a central organization, Black Lives Matter, which we talked about. One of the founders, Patrice Cullors,
right,
who's under fire. And they have local branches like here, Black Lives Matter, Northwest Indiana, who Quabena, and a lot of those guys do a lot of great work here in the community. They worked with Mayor Jerome on the police review board, and even before he got in office, they were working with Mayor Freeman Wilson on things like that. So, like, there's the local branches of Black Lives Matter. You all right, brother?
Yeah, that was a motorcycle passing by.
Okay.
All right.
Basically, what I want to say,
Go ahead, brother.
they need to establish think tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Think tanks.
This is the most important thing that Black people in the 21st century going forward need to do, and that is to establish think tanks. You know, I watched the Heritage Foundation. I've been watching them for years, and how they have formulated think tanks and think tanks all over the country as to what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and like I said, the Koch brothers and other multimillionaires and billionaires are affiliated with. These are things that Black people, should I say Black people or brown people, should associate themselves with, and that is establishing think tanks. You know, a lot of times you may have some of the smartest people at the top, but at the same time you may have some of the smartest people at the bottom. And some of the greatest thoughts may come from the bottom. And they'll never reach the top unless you establish think tanks that this knowledge can be poured into the top and become actionable.
Well, let me ask you something, because my hunch is, I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure no member of what was the think tank, the Heritage Foundation? I'm pretty sure there are no members of the Heritage Foundation that live in Appalachia.
Well, you know, you know what? I agree, but at the same time, they have recruited them on a much more lower level.
You think so?
Much more. That's what Trump did. That's exactly what Trump done in the process of what he's doing right now. They started with the top, and in the process of doing, they start recruiting whites in America that, should I say, that had a limited knowledge of education and things on that level. And that's how they ended up, when they on TV and various YouTube, they interview various people with this mega organization, Make America Great Again. Some of these people, you can tell, probably didn't make it to the 8th grade. But they are the followers. They are the followers. They become actionable in the effort. Pardon?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Finish.
No, I'm just saying they have become the ones that are actionable and doing a lot of the things that the richer, or should I say people on the top and in the middle, wouldn't do.
The only thing about that, though, I wouldn't equate Donald Trump's MAGA organization with, a think tank.
Well, see, here's the thing: the Heritage Foundation.
Well, somebody's doing the thinking.
I would.
They're not operating
spontaneously. The Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute, which is another one of those right-wing think tanks, those are more those guys, right? They view Donald Trump as sort of a useful pawn, as a moron that they could sort of impose their views on. Like when Donald Trump was getting was running for president, all those Cato Institute, Heritage Foundation, right-wing types like the Bushes, like your Marco Rubios and your Ted Cruz, they couldn't stand Trump. They didn't want nothing to do with him. But once he got elected,
they were stuck with him.
Yeah, they were stuck with him, and they started to infiltrate his administration. If you see, he got rid of Steve Bannon immediately, and he started bringing in people like John Bolton, and he started bringing in other Art Laffer, all these people who have been pushing the type of stuff that Trump had railed against, the bad trade deals, like NAFTA, and all those types of things that the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, all these people, the neoliberal, neocon way of life that they had been pushing, Trump started to mirror them a little bit more. So they found out that they could sort of infiltrate Trump, because Trump, I'll say that to the day he dies, he was a con artist above all else. He wasn't an ideologue. He wasn't a Heritage Foundation guy or Cato Institute guy. But
he wasn't.
Yeah, but the thing about Trump that made him so dangerous is that anybody who could essentially get close to him, anybody who could fluff his ego, anybody who could get in his ear could essentially influence him. Hold on, other caller. Don't hang up, other caller.
Does this relate to the? Because I know it's bad to make these kind of comparisons. It usually kills conversations. But I compare Trump with Adolf Hitler.
Uh-oh. We're going to get some angry calls now.
Not saying that he's the equivalent of Hitler. Not saying that he's like Hitler.
Saying,
I'm saying that here's a populist.
Cult of personality.
Cult of personality.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one of the key differences I hear is Hitler believed that stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff he was putting forward
Yep.
when he got in charge of the National Socialist Party, he actually believed it.
Yep.
I don't think Trump believed it. I think Trump believed in Trump.
Yep.
But I believe the difference between Trump and Hitler ran it. Trump was still a pawn for someone else. And I believe it was Putin.
But see, that's because when Hitler was doing his rise, the leaders of the German establishment, if you will, the major corporations and so forth, and the military, they thought they could control him too. They thought that he was controlled. Once he got in office, they could give him a title, give him some stuff to play with, but they would still pull the strings. But he was a true believer.
Right.
Well, I still say that Trump was being controlled by someone else.
Yeah.
Trump
was being controlled. We agree with you. Trump is being controlled because Trump believed in Trump.
Right. And like I said, because the guy was a con above all else, and the corporate media, instead of calling the guy for being just being a con artist who just who gets in where he fits in, they made him out to be Hitler and Mussolini and all that other stuff. Trump's not. He doesn't care enough about that stuff. Like, he wants to make a lot of money. He wants to be famous. He's a megalomaniac. He's a narcissist. I always compare Trump to Silvio Berlusconi from Italy. If you look up Silvio Berlusconi from Italy, he was a rich guy, just like Trump. He used to have them sex parties, the bunga bunga parties, they called them, where he'd have teenage girls running around. And it actually brought him down politically. But he was the sort of rich degenerate like Trump. Those guys always get compared to Hitler or whatever. But they like their lifestyle too much for that. They like being rich. They like, they're much more about being projecting an image than being about a real, we're gonna preserve this. Donald Trump don't give a doggone about America. He talked about immigrants, but when they looked at Mar-a-Lago, how many illegal immigrants he was hiring, like he couldn't have cared less. But thank you for your call, brother. We got this other call that has been on the line for a long time, and
let's bring him on.
And I don't want to disenfranchise this other caller. Thanks for your call. Hello, caller.
Is Black Lives Matter full of scholars?
Scholar? What'd you say?
Hello?
I don't know. He said something about, man, I hung up on the other caller for you, brother. And you just hung up on. You just said, is the Black Lives Matter full of scholar? I don't know. But as me and Rev both agree that Trump is not that sort of Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, right wing. Like, Trump ran on a lot of the stuff that the anti-Reagan. He sort of ran as the anti-Reagan. Like, I'm gonna get rid of those trade deals. I'm gonna get rid of NAFTA. I'm gonna get rid of TPP. We're gonna make America great. We're gonna close the borders. People forget that, like, the Bush family's next hope, and apparently he's still, I guess he's a little bit of hope, which is strange, which is George P. Bush.
Oh yeah.
They got the Hispanic George Bush. Okay. Have you seen this?
No, I hadn't.
Yeah, the nephew of George W. Bush, George P. Bush, was supposed to be the next one, and he has become MAGA. So he sees that Donald Trump has taken over the party. Maybe this is the caller again. Okay. Hello, caller.
Yes, how you doing?
Hello, caller. Did you just call and hang up on us?
No.
I'm sorry.
It's my first call.
Okay, what's on your mind, brother?
Yeah, I was listening to you talk about Trump and his father. Well, Trump, not his father. Mm-hmm. You comparing him to Hitler.
No,
not exactly. That's why I was so careful to say. I'm not saying he's like it. In fact, in many ways, he's the opposite.
You were in the neighborhood.
He was saying that he's a cult of personality like Trump, as opposed to being an ideologue like Hitler.
Okay, let me get out my statement.
Okay.
his daddy was big time in the Moon Stars. You know what that is?
In the what?
Uh-huh.
The Moon Stars. That was the German party, Nazi party in New York during World War II. His daddy was a major player.
Yeah.
So you could take it from there.
Okay. Well, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, like it was like the Bush family. But here's the thing: the Bush, Prescott Bush, was also one of the people who helped. A lot of people did. Like here's a lot of the sheer amount of business people. Henry Ford, I think they said, was another guy who helped fund and support the Nazi Party. Prescott Bush, IBM, the computer people. IBM was one of the companies that was associated with the Nazis. Let me see who else. I want to say Porsche, either Porsche or Ferrari. One of them was associated with the Nazis. Like a lot of people, like the way history has sort of been rewritten is that the Nazis were sort of, they were this evil outlier that had no outside help. They were just sort of this self-contained bitch. But there were a lot of people in America and Italy and France and Germany and England and everywhere else. A lot of businessmen were making money in Nazi Germany. They really were. And so it's not too hard to find people who are associated with the Nazi Party. I mean, I've heard that Trump's family has some ties to. I wouldn't be surprised. I know he is German in his heritage.
Yeah.
I do know that his.
Well, another thing you have to bear in mind at that time period, the major linchpin in Europe was the Communist Party.
Right.
After the fall of the Tsar in Russia, and the Communist Party taking over and it becoming the Soviet Union, in Europe in particular, the fear of communism was pushing a lot of these business interests to support fascism. In Spain, in Italy, in Germany, it was an issue even in Great Britain, in France. There's a reason why, for example, when France fell and Vichy France was established, there was a resistance group, but it wasn't like the French resistance was widespread, deep, and thoroughly bent on removing the German occupation.
Right.
They were as much afraid of communist cells getting in and overthrowing and establishing themselves as they were of anything else.
Right. And people tend to forget about that sort of Nazi versus communist. Like the Soviet Union lost 30 million people fighting the Nazis. Okay, so Joseph Stalin was called the Man of the Year on Time magazine here in America, and not even in the Hitler way, like, oh, we hate Hitler, but he's the most important guy. In the 1930s, Joseph Stalin was presented as an ally of the United States, and he was called the Man of the Year as an ally because they were going to help us beat Japan and Germany and Italy and those Axis powers. And then as soon as the war was over, and it became about, okay, who's going to get to run Germany now? Who's going to be the big power in Germany? Who's going to be the big power in Japan? That's a big part of how Japan ended up becoming the sort of powerhouse it became. We put our hands on Japan and said, hey, we're not going to let the Soviet Union get to y'all. Like, there's a great book everybody should read called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. By, I forget who wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It's a really good book. He talks about how after the post-war sort of struggle between how the Cold War started and how the U.S. is like, hey, we got to build back these countries because if we don't, they'll fall to communism.
Yep.
And so a lot of people did aid and abet the Nazis. A lot of people that you wouldn't even suspect. A lot of things that we have in our culture now, like Volkswagen Beetles, they came from the Nazis.
Now on the other side, though.
Fanta.
On the other side of the coin, communism was a threat. It was a serious, real economic I mean, not only economic threat, but actually an existential threat.
They had communists were very. There was a communist party here in America. That was a very. I mean, World War II kind of killed it. I mean, the Cold War killed it. But yeah, the communists and socialists were very. Eugene Debs, the labor movement, the labor unions in this country, they were the ones who really fought for the 40-hour work week, the 8-hour day, all that stuff. Oh, but go ahead, Rev. I'm sorry.
But the thing is, from the if you look at communist, I don't want to say theology, but yeah, it's worldview. When I say threat, what I mean that is not that it was designed to create pain for you or anybody else, but that it offered a different way of viewing the world. And so if your way of viewing the world was based on basically what had developed out of a Christianized Europe, communism offered an alternative, a different way of viewing the world. And so in that sense, it was a threat. Because it would mean you'd have to change the way you viewed labor. You'd have to change the way you viewed ownership of property and material and intellectual property. All these things, you'd have to change the way you viewed it. Because from the communist perspective, you don't own. We own. We as the group own. We as the group work together to establish a perfect society where we all benefit equally. But it does it on the premise that we are the only saviors we have.
Right.
And so, for that reason, for example, there have been no communist governments that didn't have an adversarial relationship to the church. There have been none.
Well, they're inherently irreligious, like China, the Soviet Union. I mean, Castro used to put them in jail, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it's not that they were irreligious; it's that there's a religious impulse in humans. It's going to go somewhere, and communism says it should go to the state. Christianity says it should go to Jesus.
Right.
It's sort of a situation where we come to to the issue of social justice. Okay. Black Lives Matter gets much of its energy, its impetus from critical race theory. Critical race theory is a development of critical theory as applied to the study of the law and why it is that what liberal thought viewed with regard to the law as it was applied to racial issues, why didn't the liberal solutions work? Seemingly, they would work if everybody wants everybody else to be treated well, that everybody is an individual and everybody has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you respected that and recognized it in law, then things should get solved. Why didn't that happen? Critical race theory looks at that and says the reason is because that the deep down at the foundation, those people who said they believe that, they don't really believe that. They don't believe that we are all human beings, all of us descended from the one human Adam. They believe that there are different levels of humanity, and there's somebody's going to be on top, somebody's going to be on the bottom, and the person that's going to be on top ought to be European. And the person that's on the bottom ought to be African. Or as Abraham Lincoln is quoted as saying, there's going to be somebody on top, somebody on the bottom. I would prefer it was us on top.
Right. Oh, moving along.